but I thought let's do it. You guys remember that I had that respiratory infection, or that lung infection, respiratory infection for quite a bit of time, and uh, although I no longer have it, I had this longing coughing that maybe you're gonna see it in this live. I hope not. But basically, that has been afflicting me a little bit. It's very tolerable. It's just annoying, but it's not the ideal to do a live and spend half the time coughing, right? I may cough a few times this live, but I really hope not much. So hopefully this will be a much more smooth event. Let me know if you can hear me well. Let me know if you can see me well. I usually have these kind of issues with the with the setups, and since I haven't done a live for a while, sometimes these things are not really properly configured. So let me know if you can hear me. I see that the person has joined. If you want to say hello, feel free to do so. I now see 3 people. Let me know if sound is good. Let me know if you can hear me well. That would be great. I cannot see anything on the chat, so I don't think anybody is writing anything. We'll give it. Okay, I see Mohammed. I see Jurassic. Hello, welcome. I decided to do a quick surprise live. K-Man, thank you for joining. Carla. Oh shit, I missed it. So I think we'll start in a few seconds. Don't forget, drop that like and subscribe if you haven't done it. It's the only thing that I ask, so thank you very much for your support. Now, I decided to do surprise live. Obviously, this week was very turbulent. We have some nice things happening at the moment that I think will give you some peace of mind, let's say. Oh, I see Mohammed. Yeah, I haven't done many live streams. I have basically recovered now fully from the lung infection. However, I still have some lagging, cough, which is much better now. But I'm willing to give it a go for a live. But I really wanted to avoid, coughing the whole time. It's not really nice. So let's kickstart, right? Markets decimated, everybody going crazy. I will give you a little bit of the overview of the first 2 months of presidency, or 2 months and a half of presidency of Trump, and then we can compare to what he was promising in his campaign trail. So I think when it comes to crypto, everything has been extremely positive. The SEC chairman Gary Gensler is gone. The strategic reserve is being made. Ways to buy Bitcoin and be tax neutral is being assessed. Ethereum will be part of it as well. I will answer questions in a little bit, but it's true. Maybe the exception would be, so Jurassic was saying that if it doesn't make new all-time highs, then basically it proves the theory of Bitcoin maxis, that every altcoin, including Ethereum, eventually bleeds into Bitcoin. There are 2 exceptions to that rule that I'm aware, which is Dogecoin, which has outperformed Bitcoin dramatically since 2013, and the second one is BNB. Although you can make the argument that they take profits of the exchange and buy the token. If you own the token, you don't really care. Actually, if you look at the previous bear market, most people never paid any attention to this. So Bitcoin came down in 2022 77%. Ethereum came down 85%, and BNB came down 62%. So it was much better to hold BNB during the bear market than during the bull run. And actually, it was like the second altcoin or first altcoin to make a new all-time high this cycle after Bitcoin. So if you just hold BNB, it would have been much better than even holding Bitcoin during the bear. Most people don't even know this, but it's actually quite interesting. But let's go back a little bit to the presidency. So during the campaign trail, not just Trump, but his entourage, his team, were saying, and that's very true, we need lower interest rates. Now, this is key because the US has $36 trillion in debt, out of which $9 trillion is to be refinanced and rolled over this year. The fact that the 10-year yield has come down a total of 100 basis points, which is 1%, 1% out of 9 trillion is what? 900 billion? Or is my math correct? So 9 trillion divided by 10, that's 990 billion. Sorry, so that's 90 billion already. Just 90 billion of savings right there. But it's really not that, because the debt doesn't refinance all in one go. So the more interest rates fall, the more savings the US will get from dropping those interest rates. So one thing that they've said is interest rates are too high, we need lower rates. Now people think, oh, that's the Fed's fund rate. Again, the Fed fund rate is about overnight funding for banks. So banks, during the night, go to the Federal Reserve and they borrow from the Fed at whatever the Fed fund rate is. If you look at the two-year yield is like 3.4%, yet the Fed funds rate is 4.3%. See what I mean? You roll over the 3.3%, you don't roll over the Fed funds rate, because the debt of the United States is not refinanced at overnight funding rates. It's refinanced at 5, 10, 2, 7 years, etc. So, okay, so interest rates needed to come down. Done. Next one. Dollar, too strong, needs to come down. Done. Oil, too high, needs to come down, because that drags down all the inflation pressures. Gasoline comes down. Diesel comes down. Natural gas for heating comes down, etc., etc. So that's also done. Then on the crypto side, as we discussed, he implemented everything that he was proposing, and the only thing now missing is really a plan to acquire X amount of Bitcoin over the next Y amount of years. Okay, so that's done. Another one, stop illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is now down 95% versus last year. But wait a minute, I thought that we had to pass a massive bill to stop illegal immigration. No bill has been passed, yet it's down 95%. That's why his approval rating, despite all of this, is still actually quite decent. It's very close to 50% or even above 50%. There's a reason for it. Okay, then Doge will lead to massive government savings. Done and in progress. So that has also been done. People thought, oh, there's going to be a marketing tool. Nothing actually is going to happen from that. And now people are pissed because actually something is being done out of it. Then the other thing he promised, and this has not yet happened, is a stop to the conflict in Europe. He's doing what he can. The Middle East, same thing. And then massive tax cuts to both corporations and people. So one of the things that I've heard when during the campaign trail, but I thought this was a complete, how to say, just, campaign talk, right? We're gonna do this and the other. He said people making $150K or less will stop paying income tax. And I'm like, nah, that's not possible. I mean, you're crazy. Like, you're going to blow up your deficit. What I didn't realize, because I don't know all these things by heart, is actually when I looked at it, with the Euro conflict, I think they're taking longer than expected, because I think he's in a difficult position over there because if he gives too much support to Ukraine, then Ukraine can use it as leverage against the Russians. So it's a bit of it's a tricky position. I actually think that the whole thing will be sorted out within the next 2 months. I have my reasons to believe that. Maybe I will address that in a separate video. But that's my feeling. But it's taking longer than expected. But then the tariffs were also something that has been promising for a long time. Now, here's the issue. I was saying about the income tax, right? I thought that this was a complete lunacy. Not lunacy, just things that politicians say to get elected, right? I mean, I don't take it too seriously because if he would achieve half of what he was proposing, I was already happy. So, I mean, if he doesn't get here, it's so be it. So what I found out is this. 90% of the population in the US makes 150K or less. 90% of the population. But what the taxes that those 90% pay, it's only 25% of the income tax revenue. It's around $675 billion. 675. So if Doge saves, they're targeting $1 trillion. Let's say they save $500 billion. And the tariff revenue is, I don't know, 300 billion, which let's say if you put a 10% tariff, 10% only, on the top 40 or 50 nations that the US trades with, you're talking already 300, almost $400 billion. So between those two only, forget about saving money and paying lower interest and so on, and forget about growth, you can actually already have the income tax to 0%, replaced by these two things. Because in my view, and for the people that follow me that live in the US, I don't think you're going to see ever again 2019 prices. What you can have is, okay, let me keep more of my paycheck, if not all of my paycheck, and then I can live with a higher cost of living. But I cannot be paying 35% to the government and having my cost of living at the same time going up. That's the key. And I think that's what's been tried to achieve right now. Now, you ask me, why the tariffs now? Why not in 6 months? Why not in 9 months? Why not in 12 months? The reason is tariffs, particularly of this scale, which in my view are to trigger negotiations, the most part to trigger negotiations, is this is going to create a lot of turbulence in the market, as you just saw. So you have to do it as soon as possible. Why? Next year, later in the year, so next year I think 2026, late 2026, you're going to have midterms. In the midterms, the Republicans can lose control of the Senate or the House or even both, which means after that point in time, pretty much nothing will be achieved, because if that happens, the Democrats will block everything. So almost nothing will be possible, or much less will be possible. But if you do it right now, and you have some pain right now, if things go well, by the time you get there, people already forgot. People say, oh yeah, you remember those stock market back in the tariffs, do you remember? Yeah, I think stuff went down like 20%. But it was fine, by the summer things were fine, it's just just a negotiating stuff, you know how it is. Trump is always like, you see what I mean? So you have to do it as soon as possible, so people forget between now and then, or forget most of what has happened. That's reason number one. Reason number two, and this is more important in my view, and many times this is for my dear American followers, you know what I'm saying is true. Most of the times, Americans don't pay attention to anything going outside America. And usually, they are not very much aware of what's happening to other places, particularly outside of the American continent. So, not just the US, but the American continent. So, Canada has been struggling to the point where Justin Trudeau had an approval rating of like 17%, right? The worst of any politician in Canada of all time. Germany, this is 2024. Remember, Trump came into office 20th January. I'm talking 2024, the year, right? So before he gets into office. Germany, GDP was in contraction. France was in contraction. The UK has been under stagflation, flat growth with high inflation. So when people say, "Oh, maybe are we gonna have stagflation? Are we not gonna have?" You already have stagflation. It's called the UK. It's already happening. You don't need to imagine whatever. You can just look at it. It's already happening. Why do you think that the UK has a politician 1 year to the right of Trump? Really need to think stuff like Sarah Palin and stuff like that. And the next year, it's all the way to an equivalent of an Ocasio-Cortez, and then on the other year is all the way to the equivalent of the opposite side. And because they're desperate, they're just voting for anything. They're just trying anything to get out of the situation they're in. Why do you think the AfD, which is considered the very extremist party in Germany, to be honest, I don't follow it enough to know, but it's considered like that. Why do you think they grew dramatically? Look who won the elections in Italy. Look who won the elections in the Netherlands. France, Germany, contraction. UK flat. Italy flat. With the exception of Spain, which is growing faster than the US. The main European economies are a complete disaster at the moment. So what's going to happen to them when, number one, they need to divert a lot of resources that, to be honest, they don't have at the moment into building their own defense. Plus, they lose their number one customer at the same time. What does that mean for them? So that's point number two. Point number three is China is struggling and has been struggling for 3 years now with deflation, with the property market imploding literally. If you want 2008 / Japan 1991 style, and they are plagued with overcapacity. So the way they would solve this issue is shut down half your factories. What's the problem with that? Of course, you fire so many people that you're gonna have a huge problem in your country. So you cannot do it. So you have to find ways to have buyers for your products, because clearly in-house you don't have them, and you're already at overcapacity as it is. Okay, what happens to your overcapacity problem when you lose your number one customer? What happens? So that's the point number three. And now you kickstart the game theory event. The UK already wants to talk to Trump and to accelerate the bilateral trade deal agreement. India has been negotiating for quite a while now. Vietnam has said, we are willing to drop all the tariffs and all the controls we have against the US. Cambodia, same thing. Argentina, same thing. Whoever's going to get the first deals will get the better conditions, because once the US has enough partners, you can be very nasty for your remaining 10-15%. So that's the trick, because reportedly Hungary and Italy are already trying to strike deals with the US. So this is going to start to happen, particularly when you have your first deal. It's going to be a race, because there's a reason why this timing in particular is being selected. Now, there are also risks for the US. If the other countries don't budge, consumption in the US will drop like a stone, which means recession. Is it going to be short-lived? Is it going to be longer? We don't know. Depends on who breaks first. Now, the issue of what with the retaliatory tariffs from China is that the US imports much more than what China imports from the US in terms of goods. So playing that shows a little bit of desperation. And what surprised me is Trump is very willing to let the stock market drop. I think a lot of people were thinking, oh, this is just bluff. As soon as the market starts to break, he's going to try to pump it up and he's going to reverse some of the stuff. But then it comes with those tariffs, which are calculated in a stupid way. Of course, the tariffs that he shows are completely idiotic. That's not the point. That's not the idea. Is not to be mathematical precise here. That's not what's trying to be achieved here. It's trying to leverage the position of the US on the world. I still think, now this is purely my, call it conspiracy theory, what you want. I think it's going to make a very big deal with Canada and potentially Mexico as well, but at least Canada. I think that deal will include minerals, metals, lumber, agriculture, you name it. I think there's going to be really a connection between, and I know how weird this sounds because the US has been very antagonistic against Canada, but I get the feeling if those two countries team up, and if you include Mexico in the same story, you solve a lot of issues for the US and you make a truly powerhouse in that region. And if you do it, plus you have some sort of agreement with Greenland, I don't think the US will take over Greenland, but something where it becomes very close to US influence, plus the Panama ports being acquired, plus a very good friend in El Salvador, plus a very good friend in Argentina, then the US controls, or has very strong influence, if you want to call it, from the Arctic to the bottom of South America. And on the other side, you have Japan, of course, which is also a strong ally. And I think that's, to the US, is really the priority. I don't think they have any interest in, and you know, it's a pity to say, but it's a reality. I don't think they have any interest in Europe. I don't think they care. I don't think they care about the conflicts in Europe, you know, between Russia and I just think it's just not in their strategic interest. Like, if you live in Europe, you feel, oh my God, how can they don't care? This is terrible. But I think the US has completely lost patience with endless. I mean, I'm not an American. I don't live in the US, but I get the feeling very strong that Americans are completely sick and tired of endless conflicts, endless money being spent in wars in countries that can barely point in the map. I think that era of American interventionism is over. Across the board, I don't think it's just Republicans. I think the majority of people don't want any of that. Particularly, I mean, the Americans look at the Europeans as the eternal continent at war. And to a certain degree, it's right. I mean, if you look at the last 200 years, 300 years, the players change, the culpables change, the aggressors and the victims change, but somewhere or another, that continent is always with something. And I think the US is now sick and tired of banking all of it. I truly believe, particularly as the Americans have suffered quite a bit in the past. One of the reasons due to deindustrialization. I don't think they have the patience anymore to participate in any of these. I think they want to secure control or influence or friendship, whatever you want to call it, from the Arctic to South America. That's the key. That's why there's always this, as soon as you get in, Canada, Greenland, Canada, Greenland, meeting with Milei from Argentina like 10 times, meeting with the El Salvador president like 10 times, telling BlackRock to buy the Panama ports and to control the Panama Canal. the amount of meetings that you see on that side of the world is truly staggering. But people get distracted with, oh, he said Canada is going to be the 51st state, or he said Gulf of America, not Gulf of Mexico, and he said, and people get lost in that, and they don't pay attention to what is much more important and happening at the same time. Um, I really think that somewhere or another that's the goal, and I get the feeling that is also, I think they're going to do some form of Commonwealth deals. I think the US is going to do a big deal with the UK and potentially with Australia. Check the tariffs. Australia was pretty much untouched in the middle of all of this. So I think that he will try to do some deals, particularly with those countries in particular. Now, to understand this matter of the tariffs, generally speaking, yes, the US has been screwed over the years with controls and tariffs on the imports of American goods. And you can see that very clearly in a simple exercise. The UAE and Singapore have little to no controls against American goods. So if you go to those countries, you see a lot of American products, American cars, American clothes, American this, you see a lot of it. But if you go to countries in Europe and many in Asia, you don't see anything American. So how is it possible that they can sell to some of those countries and they cannot sell to the others? Well, it's not just about tariffs. If you give subsidies to certain companies, or if you fund companies and they don't have to compete, and in the case of the US a while ago, they paid much higher corporate tax than what they pay nowadays, then American companies adjust their position. What does that mean? Forget about the Americans. Let's take the Americans out. There was a massive issue for many years between Europe and China when it came to imports and of steel and chemicals. So basically, the Chinese were dumping literally tons and tons of steel in the European markets, and the prices were super, super low. And American companies and European companies started going out of business. Now you ask me, oh, but what's the problem? That means that the Chinese companies are so efficient that they can produce steel at extremely low prices. The answer is no. They can sell those products at those prices because the Chinese government was funding them and allowing them to do that. But the European companies are private. They don't have the funding of the government to survive. So they started going out of business. European workers go unemployed. Is this fair? Is this free trade? Is this fair trade? No. Is there a tariff? No. But there's intervention that prevents you from competing, and it's not, it shouldn't be allowed in that sense. Other things is, China can just come and invest, not China, but you have many countries like this. You have Vietnam was also like this. You have Thailand to a certain degree was like this. They can come to your country and invest and open businesses and do everything. But then if you try to go to their country, it doesn't work. You have to have local partners. You have to share technology. You have to do all of this kind of stuff. So and now you say, okay, but why didn't the US care about this for so many years or for so many decades? First of all, there's a video going on online, and this is all true. Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and Bernie Sanders used to say exactly what Trump says about tariffs throughout the years. Exactly the same. Now you ask what changed? Simple. Look who financed the campaigns of those people. You see, for corporations, for American corporations, what they do is very simple. We fire and close our American plants. We go to Vietnam or to Poland or to whatever, and we open new factories over there. We save a ton of money, and then me, the CEO, and the senior management get huge bonuses. Our stock prices go through the roof, and then I use part of that money to fund political campaigns to make sure that this thing doesn't change, because it's great for me. I know it's terrible for Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and a bunch of other manufacturing places of the US, but who cares? It's good for me. That's what matters. So follow the money. And this has nothing to do with the Democrats in particular. Who made the most amount of money when Bush was president? Defense contractors and oil and gas companies. Who gave the most money for the Bush campaign? Defense contractors, oil and gas companies. Who gave the most amount of money to Obama? Insurance companies and banks. Who made the most money with Barack Obama? Insurance companies and banks. That's it. And this is all public information. It's not conspiracy theories. It's not a guy in his basement talking about it in secret and saying that the video is about to get deleted at any second. No. All of this is actually public. People just don't care. So that's reason number one. The reason number two, and the final reason, is this. The US is the reserve currency. That means that if they have deficits across the planet, they can just print the money and issue debt. And they can just go like that, and it's much easier. But what is the problem? The problem is, once again, American companies will think, hey, those guys charge me 15% tariffs. I cannot even sell my cars there anymore. I'm just going to close my factory in Detroit and open it in Berlin, or open it in Poland, or open it in southern Italy, or it doesn't matter. So they just do it. And this is all fair game, and this is all fine but you're always under the risk that one day someone can come and say no, which is what happened. There's something that has also happened that people didn't pay any attention. He's been in office for less than 3 months, and he already got $3 trillion in investments. The UAE has pledged $1.4 trillion over 10 years in the US. Saudi Arabia has pledged $600 billion over the next 4 years. Apple, $500 billion, and then between a bunch of other companies like the Taiwanese semiconductor company, etc., we're talking another $300-400 billion. So you're talking $2.8 to $2.9 trillion in less than 100 days. In less than 3 months, so less than 90 days. These are things that have impact over the next 10, 20 years in the US. You won't see it in year 1 or 2, but you'll start seeing it in year 3 and 4. So those things are also very important. Once again, nobody's paying any attention. Now let's go to the markets. One of the things that was very interesting is that crypto held up quite well. Now there are two options here. Either crypto will just catch up to the downside. So basically, we held up well, but now we're going to fall the rest of the market and go down. That's option one. Option two is crypto leads stocks, and we already had our bottom at 76K for Bitcoin, and now stocks are having their bottoms later, and then they will follow crypto to the upside. Which one is it? I'm more convinced that the bottom for crypto is in, and I'm convinced, or I think there's a very good chance that stocks will probably bottom within, either they already bottomed or they will bottom in the first half of this week. So Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. I think the CPI numbers will come very strong. If you look at trueflation, the CPI in the US at the moment is at 1.3%. So actually, inflation should start dropping like a stone. And that will change really the mood. And then the question becomes, what happens if some trade agreements start to be announced, or the prospect of the trade agreements in a serious basis starts to be announced. What happens if that happens? What happens if the conflict finally ends in Europe? See, people are very happy to go into the parade of imaginary horribles, but they never think on the other side. Liquidity conditions have improved dramatically. Yields have come down super aggressively. The dollar has come down very aggressively, and oil has come down very aggressively. All of this means, with a lag of 60 days or so, 70 days, this all means high prices. But this already happened also in Q1, so we should start seeing some of those benefits right now. And then we had a few things that have been very positive. Peter Schiff has predicted yesterday Black Monday number 19 since 2022. Yes, I counted. He has predicted 19 times now that a Black Monday is going to happen. The first 18, he failed. So the question is he going to go for 19? Which is quite funny because that's the number of people watching at the moment. Maybe that's a sign. Who knows? Number 2, Harry Dent came out with a prediction that the Nasdaq's going to fall 94%. That's good. The best one is Jim Cramer just predicted the Black Monday to happen this Monday, which, if we go up 7%, wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm not Are you predicting 7% plus in stocks? No, I'm not predicting 7% plus in stocks on Monday. But Jim Cramer predicting a Black Monday is something special, if you know anything about Jim Cramer. So we need to wait and see. A lot of people are, this is also a very dangerous time for this. The perma bears, the people that predict market crashes and destruction all day long, now they momentarily look like geniuses. And this is when YouTube Finance starts to reinvite them to a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. And they will never address their track record. Very importantly, they will hide their track records. And they will say things like, oh, you've been predicting this to happen and now it's happening, to give the impression that this person is always right, when it's the complete opposite. And unfortunately, a lot of these things start to go on Twitter, etc. So a lot of new investors come in, and the first people they meet is these guys, which means they will eventually get destroyed. I invite you to follow a guy, and this is not even the worst, which is George Gammon from the Rebel Capitalist or whatever. I challenge you to find or to follow him and wait for the first week that he doesn't mention the global financial crisis of 2008. He mentions it every single week. There's always something that is similar to the great financial crisis every week. And he's been doing this, that I've seen, since 2020. Non-stop. Financial crisis, great financial crisis. Every week. Never happens. But unfortunately, these people, as the majority of retail is now looking into fear stuff, will end up in these channels. So I'm not saying you shouldn't listen. I'm not saying you shouldn't do what they say. That's not what I'm saying. Just before you do anything, check their track record. That's all I ask. And you'll see for yourself, and then you make your own decision. But just check it, because the people interviewing them, they will never address it. That's very important. So I think we are in very interesting times. I'm very keen to see what happens with crypto. I don't pay much attention to today and Sunday moves. Particularly in crypto, because the market is so thin in volume and liquidity that a few players can really move it if they want, up or down. So I don't think that's really, really relevant unless there's like a drop of 9% overnight or something like this. I think really when you see the first deal happening, I think there's going to be really a race for trade deals, because then it's the game of it's just game theory, right? It's if you don't do it, you risk getting worse than other countries. So now you have the incentive to do it. And I guess that's it, guys, from my side. Just wanted to cover this. To be honest, I'm actually quite relaxed because I've been in crypto for so long. I see people stressing out, oh, the stock market dropped 10%. Look, guys, I've seen drops of 25% in my coins in 6 hours over the years. I don't know, maybe I'm numbed. Maybe I'm completely, I just don't feel any pain whatsoever when it comes to those kind of things. But to see people like completely looking like headless chickens, it's really super amusing. But you know how it is. It's so funny to see, right? People have been saying, "Oh my God, I really wanted stocks to drop. They're so expensive. I can't buy them. They're already so much high. Should I buy here? This is terrible. They never come down, blah, blah, blah." And then when they come down, they panic. So this is why they are always, forever destined to make no money in the markets, because they cannot buy the red. They just can't. So they always buy the green. They always like to pile into Nvidias after 10x's and all of this. It is what it is. But in any case, guys, I'm actually very happy. I've gone through the live without coughing, which is great. I'm really almost 100%, but that's very good. Just wanted to make this quick live just to address some of these things happening. I think there's a good chance the worst is behind us. Maybe we have some more pain in the beginning of the week, particularly, I don't know, if something happens like Europe also puts in tariffs back, or China and the US scale it up. Who knows? Anything is possible. Thank you, Dini. Thank James. Really happy to have you here, guys. Don't forget, if you can just drop a like and a subscribe. I never ask you for money. I never ask you for private groups. I never sell you anything. I just ask a simple like and subscribe. Thank you very much for joining today. I hope that this has been useful. Really glad to be here, and I really need to be a bit more disciplined and have more lives on a regular basis. But in any case, I think it was very good to catch up with you guys. Wish you a very good weekend. I really appreciate all the support. You guys are the best. And to me, the biggest achievement of this channel, I will share this one with you because it really makes me proud. I'm going to ask the chat, what do you think is my average like to dislike ratio of the channel? Guess. So let's say if my like to dislike ratio is 50-50, that means it's 50%, right? So if it's 60% like, 40% dislike, then it's 60-40. So my question is, can you guys guess how much it is? Okay, I see 95%. So only one bet, 95. Anybody else wants to guess? So it says 95% like, 90-10. Yeah, my channel. How much you think it is? Like versus dislike. So I have a 95% and I have a 90-10. I'll give it another 10 seconds or 20 seconds for final predictions, if anybody wants. So I'm at 44-20, 65-35, 44. Okay, 5 seconds. And I will share this one with you because this is really my biggest point of pride. No, my average like to dislike is 98.6. At the highest was 98.8. So 95 was the closest, but it's actually higher than that. It's 98. Nowadays is 98.6. I think at the best it was 98.8. So I mean, that's crazy. That means that there are videos that I have like 100 likes, and there are videos which are like only 100 likes. I have 0 dislikes, and I really appreciate it. Um, and I'm really proud about the community. People said, "Oh, I think you should have much more subscribers and viewers." I said, "No, no, I really like the people we have here. They're super respectful, even when they push back at me, because I have a bit of a at this stage I have a bullish bias. There's going to be a time where I don't, and when the market's coming down." No, James. What I'm talking about is ratio. So it's like versus dislike of my videos, and then the channel creates it's an average. It's like analytics. You know, when you look at the analytics, it will tell you your average channel is whatever, and the average of the channel is 98.6%, and at the highest was 98.8, and that to me is much more important than anything else. I really think that people may not agree with me all the time, or may think that I'm full of crap from time to time. But even the bad comments, let's say, are usually very respectful, and I'm very happy with it. In particular, when you have tough market conditions, people get angry, people get annoyed, people get pissed. Yet the average is still super, super high. No, just life. No, you see, the reason why I don't have it is because I don't try to sell you anything. That's it. So there were people that sometimes gave me super chats, and I actively asked them, please don't do that, because I prefer that you keep that money for yourself. Do you know any crypto channel that does that? So I purposely, because to me it makes no sense. If I'm such a crypto successful investor, then why do I need your $150 a month? Right? Makes no sense to me. No, but in any case, guys, thank you very much. Once again, now it's the time to go. Thank you very much for being a wonderful community. I really hope you guys continue to follow and like, and I will try also my best to be a little bit more consistent with these lives, and to have a little bit of a better setup also for your Q&A. And I always try to answer all your comments, so please feel free to drop those. Thank you very much, and I'll leave you be. Have a nice weekend.